Hey there, I hope you're doing well. My name is Adam and today we're going to look at some more Reddit stories. If you enjoy Reddit stories, consider liking, subscribing, and maybe hitting that notification bell too. Let's get started with today's first story. Much love, everyone. Today's first story comes from I gave my cheating wife divorce papers in front of coworkers and revealed her affair partner. Let me tell you my story. My name is Emery and I fell in love with Lila when we were just teenagers. We got married when we turned 20 and we couldn't wait to start our life together, but I always felt like something was missing. I had dropped out of college to start working and provide for my young wife, but the thought of not finishing my degree always lingered in the back of my mind, so I made a decision to go back to school part-time and finish what I had started. We were over the moon when we found out. We were expecting a child, but with a baby on the way, I felt even more pressure. To finish my degree, I wanted to give my family the best future possible. Our son Max was born and I had just started my last year of college. It was a tough schedule to say the least. I worked as a store stalker from 3 a.m. to 7, and followed by a full-time administrative job at the police department from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. on Tuesdays. I had classes from 5:30 p.m. to 10 p.m. and on Saturdays from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m., but I was determined to make it work. Lila was a nurse's aide at a local hospital, working from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. Luckily, my mother lived just a 10-minute drive away from our jobs and school, so Max was in good hands. It was a tough time for us, but we supported each other through it all the weekend before Lila and I had been at each other's throats. She was unhappy that I wouldn't take time off from studying to spend time with her and our son. She had been criticizing my work and school commitments for some time now, and it had taken a toll on our relationship. We hadn't been intimate in 2 months, and on this particular Monday evening things came to a head. I was in the middle of fact-checking a research paper I'd completed over the weekend, which was due the following Tuesday evening. Lila was picking fights and causing a scene. Finally, in frustration, I told her to shut up and quit acting like a child. Her freaking response just knocked the wind out of me. She looks me dead in the eye and spits out, "I hate you and I'm in love with someone else." I was in complete shock. We ended up arguing for hours until Lila finally came clean, turns out. She'd been having an emotional affair with a janitor at the hospital where she worked as a nurse's aide. Can you imagine? It started innocently enough with compliments and lunch dates in the cafeteria, but then it escalated real fast. She was freaking bad-mouthing me and even kissing this guy. Behind my back, I was completely shattered by this revelation. My world had crumbled around me. I couldn't comprehend how the woman I loved had betrayed me in such a way. I felt like my entire life was a lie, so I made the decision to leave. I came back to the living room, carrying my suitcase, and walked past her without saying a word. She kept asking me where I was going, taunting me with questions like running back to mommy. I set down the suitcase in the driveway, went back inside and grabbed her purse. I held it out to her and told her to leave. She was stunned and refused to go, so I picked her up, gently threw her over my shoulder and carried her outside to the hood of the car. She was too shocked to resist. As I went back in the house and locked the door, she tried to get back inside, but I held the deadbolt firmly and eventually she left to stay at her parents' place. She told them we were separating, but she didn't reveal the real reason. That night felt endless, and I had to call both my jobs to inform them that I had a family emergency and wouldn't be coming in the next day. At some point, exhaustion overtook me and I drifted off to sleep. My plan. I woke up at 7 this morning, my mind already preoccupied with thoughts of how to minimize contact with Lila, my soon-to-be ex-wife. The situation between us had been escalating and I knew I needed to act fast before things got messy. I called my mother to ask if she could watch our son for the day, but she sounded worried, asking why the boy wasn't with us. Already after dropping off my son at my mother's, I went straight to the office of a lawyer friend of my family, Mr. Douglas. He had gone to school with my father, so I knew him well and trusted him. I explained the situation to him and asked for his help in filing for divorce as soon as possible. Mr. Douglas listened patiently and suggested I take some time to think about it, but I was irresolute. I wanted to get the divorce papers completed that day. He agreed to help and said he would have them ready. By the end of the day, I promised to pick them up and file them with the clerk's office. Myself, as I left the office, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. Finally, I was taking control of my life and making the decisions I needed to make. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but I was determined to see it through. I went to work and came back home showered and had breakfast with my son and sister later that day. Lila called wanting to make arrangements to see our son. She was angry and confrontational on the phone, insisting that she wanted to take our son for the weekend. I refused and suggested that we meet on Sunday at a local park. Lila hung up on me. I went to work at the police department, but I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. From my conversation with Lila, I decided to take action and went to the clerk's office to file for divorce later in the day. A girl I knew from the office informed me that the papers were ready to be served to Lila at her workplace. I called a deputy I knew and asked him to serve the papers to Lila at work. The deputy agreed to serve the papers. The next day, Lila returned to work after our phone call and was approached by her janitor who chatted with her. Throughout the day, they were not able to eat lunch together or meet that evening, because the janitor claimed he had to attend something with one of his kids. Lila had previously been told that he was divorced with 3 children after work. Lila went to her parents' house later that night. She called me 3 times, but I hung up on her each time. I realized it was her calling one day around noon. Mr. Douglas walked into the nurse's station and asked for Lila. She came forward and Mr. Douglas declared in a loud voice, "Mrs. Lila, you're being sued for divorce due to infidelity." Lila was in shock and fell to the ground. The in charge of the hall named Alex rushed to her aid. Lila felt a wave of shame and guilt wash over her as she realized the severity of what she had done. She knew that Emery would never forgive her. She couldn't believe that she had let this happen. Mr. Douglas picked her up and put her in a chair. Alex tried to calm her down, but it took a while for her to regain her composure. My wife was almost done with her shift when she received a call to meet the hospital administrator in her office. She was terrified, thinking that someone had reported her outburst. Tell us you're excited about this story. If you liked the video, press A. If not, press B. Your feedback motivates me to find more positive stories. She goes into the administrator's office and guess what, the door slams shut and bam, she's fired. Can you imagine the look on her face? Priceless. They even told her not to bother coming back to the property. I guess she won't be mixing business with pleasure anymore, huh? And the icing on the cake. Her final paycheck will be mailed to her. It turns out that someone had witnessed the affair in the parking lot and reported it. The story of the divorce papers had also made its way around the hospital, and the janitor had already been fired and escorted off the property. Just an hour earlier, the news of the scandal had spread like wildfire throughout the hospital, and my wife felt as though everyone knew she left the hospital and drove straight to her parents' house without telling them what was happening. Only that she and I were separated and things were not looking good. I was sitting at the dinner table with my son enjoying a peaceful evening at home. As I look back on the day's events, I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. The deputy had informed me of my wife's infidelity and subsequent firing from the hospital, I must admit. Hearing about the janitor's termination was also quite satisfying considering his involvement in the scandal. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door interrupting my thoughts. I got up to answer it and was met with a heavily pregnant woman who could barely stand up straight. She was asking for my wife Lila, but I informed her that she no longer lived with me when she asked if I was Lila's husband. I confirmed that I was and that I had served her with divorce papers. Earlier that day, the woman then revealed herself to be the janitor's wife and began to explain what had happened at the hospital. I was horrified by the details she shared about my wife's affair and the location they had been meeting at a house that I knew nothing about. I couldn't believe the janitor's behavior and wished I could have taken action against him. She asked me where Lila was, and I told her that she was with her parents after assuring me that she only wanted to talk to Lila and tell her the truth. She asked for directions to Lila's parents' house before leaving the woman. Also complimented me on my parenting skills, telling me that I was a wonderful father to my son, who was still sitting at the table. As I watched her leave, I couldn't help but feel a sense of sadness and betrayal, but as a man, I knew that I had to be strong for my son and move forward with the divorce the secret game my wife was playing. It turned out that my wife Lila had been involved in a sick game that the janitor and his friends were playing. They had been keeping score to see how many married women they could sleep with in just 90 days. Lila was the janitor's third conquest, and he had even done it with a fourth woman on the same night that he had his thing with one of his kids. I was disgusted and angry about what I had heard. The house that was mentioned was actually a rented place where the men took the women. They were seeing when the janitor's wife found out about everything. He came home high and crying, confessing everything in an attempt to work it out. Lila was stunned when she found out, and the janitor's wife confronted her, telling her how she had seen me feeding our son all alone, because Lila was being selfish and stupid. Lila lost control and started crying while the janitor's wife walked away and left. My in-laws checked on her. After hearing the car drive off, she was basically catatonic. They got her inside and were discussing taking her to the emergency room when she began to just talk out of her head. My father-in-law thought she was on speed or something. My father-in-law was really hurt by the whole situation, as he was a good man who didn't deserve to have his daughter cheat on her husband. My mother-in-law, on the other hand, blamed me for the whole thing, as she always did. I couldn't stand my mother-in-law and was glad to be rid of her. It was a tough situation, but as a man, I knew that I had to take care of my son and move on from this mess. I was hurt and angry, but I was also relieved that I had finally found out the truth. I could finally start to move on and find a way to heal from the betrayal that had been inflicted upon me. Immediate aftermath. Later that day, I received a call from Lila's father. He informed me that she was still unresponsive and that he was afraid for her safety. She had not bathed in days and was hardly eating, and then he has the freaking nerve to ask me to go see her. Like, are you kidding me? But you know what, I don't give a damn about her after what she did, cheating on me and shattering my trust. I'm done. I can't bring myself to feel an ounce of sympathy for her. She made her bed and now she can lay in it. So without a second thought I shut down his request. I have no interest in seeing her or being dragged back into her mess. Good riddance. I told Lila's father to get her some help and assured him that I would allow her to see our son once she had gotten herself together. It was a difficult decision to make, but I knew that I had to prioritize my son's well-being over Lila's at that point. Hopefully, Lila would be able to get the help she needed and we could eventually find a way to co-parent our son in a healthy manner. But for the time being, I needed to focus on moving forward and taking care of my own mental and emotional health. While I was working, Lila called and requested a meeting to see our son. I inquired whether she was stable enough not to upset him, and she confirmed that she was. I arranged to meet her and her father at 9 a.m. in the park on Saturday, but I insisted that my mother come along. I did not want to meet Lila alone. As soon as I saw her, I knew it was wise to limit their contact to 2 hours. She was disheveled, having lost a significant amount of weight and not wearing any makeup. Instead, she smelled of ivory soap with no hint of feminine scents that I had always associated with her. I later learned that her mother had bathed and dressed her because she was unable to function properly. We continued to meet in the park for 3 weeks, extending the visits to 4 hours and including Sundays. Although she appeared to be improving each week, I was still concerned about her mental well-being and did not allow her to be alone with our son or keep him overnight. My mother-in-law eventually grew tired of this arrangement and hired a lawyer to sue for custody. However, Lila had not yet signed the divorce papers, which I was fine with, since I could file for divorce in 6 months. However, Her custody lawsuit infuriated me since she was requesting full custody. I had previously informed her father that I would eventually be willing to split custody 50-50, but her mother rejected this idea. I retaliated by seeking full custody on the grounds of mental incapacity. The hearing started. I sat there in the courtroom, my heart pounding in my chest. Across from me, Layla sat calmly, her lawyer at her side. It was hard to believe that we were here fighting over custody of our son. A year ago we had been a happy family, or so I thought, but now everything had changed. Lila's lawyer stood up and began to make her case to the judge. She talked about how Lila was a loving mother who had been unfairly deprived of her parental rights. She argued that Lila had taken steps to improve her mental health and was committed to our son's well-being. She asked the court to grant Lila full custody of our child. My lawyer stood up and countered her arguments. He told the judge that I had serious concerns about Lila's mental stability. He presented evidence that suggested that she was still struggling with her condition and might not be fit to care for our child on a full-time basis. He asked the court to grant me full custody of our son. The judge listened to both sides and then called for a recess to consider his decision. I walked out of the courtroom, feeling overwhelmed and anxious, as I leaned against the wall, trying to calm myself down. Lila's father approached me. He had been a source of support for me since the divorce, and I was grateful for his presence. "Emery, can we talk?" he asked. I nodded, and we walked outside Lila's. Father looked at me with concern in his eyes. "I know this is hard for you," he said, "but I want you to know that Lila is doing much better now. She's been seeing a therapist and taking medication. She's really committed to getting better." I sighed. I just don't know what to do. I said I want what's best for our son, but I don't trust her to take care of him on her own. Lila's father put a hand on my shoulder. "I understand that," he said, "but I also know that Lila loves your son and wants to be a part of his life. Maybe you could work out some kind of joint custody arrangement. That way your son can have both parents in his life." I thought about it for a moment and then nodded. "Yeah. I think I could do that," I said when we went back into the courtroom. The judge announced his decision. He granted joint custody to both Lila and me with the provision that Lila continued to receive treatment for her mental health condition. As I left the courtroom, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. I knew that it wouldn't be easy, but I was willing to try and make it work for the sake of my son. I looked up at the sky and whispered a silent prayer, hoping that things would get better from here on out. 5 months after Lila came to me with a proposal. We should move back in together and try to work things out. As I stood there staring at Lila in disbelief, she continued to plead her case, trying to justify her actions and convince me to take her back, but her words fell on deaf ears. I could feel the anger bubbling up inside me, threatening to explode like a volcano. Without a second thought, I slammed the door in her face. I couldn't believe the audacity she had to show up at my door. After all the pain she had caused me. My heart was still healing from the wounds she had inflicted, and she had the nerve to suggest we give our relationship another shot. It was absurd. As the door closed, I took a deep breath and turned around to see Amber standing there watching the whole scene unfold. "Oh, yes, I found someone who's a million times better. Her name's Amber and she's a freaking rock star. We hit it off like fireworks on the 4th of July. Her eyes were filled with empathy and support, and I felt a surge of gratitude toward her. She had been my rock throughout this entire ordeal with Lila, and I couldn't imagine going through it without her. Amber wrapped her arms around me, comforting me as I let out my frustrations. She reassured me that I had made the right decision and that I deserved better than someone who had hurt me so deeply. Her presence was calming, and I felt a renewed sense of determination to move forward and leave the past behind. In the days that followed, I focused on building a future with Amber. We spent time together creating memories and exploring new adventures. Her positivity and zest for life were infectious, and I found myself smiling and laughing more than I had in a long time with her by my side. The pain of Lila's betrayal slowly faded and I began to heal. Meanwhile, Lila continued to try and reach out to me, but I had made up my mind. I was done with her toxic drama and empty promises. She remained a distant memory, a lesson learned and a chapter closed in my life. I was moving forward with Amber by my side. Life was too short to dwell on the past, and I was determined to make the most of every moment with the woman who had stolen my heart. With Amber, had found my true happiness, and I was ready to embrace the amazing future that lay ahead. Cheers. I'm going to turn this one over to you. What do you make of this situation? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and as always, a huge thank you from the bottom of my heart for getting involved in today's stories. Your love, support, and time mean the world to me. So, thank you so much for being part of this. I really appreciate your time. I'll see you in the next one. Take care and much love.